Hello, and welcome back to the Michigan State Wealth Management Association podcast. We are back with another episode of the Summer Rewind series, where we get to upload previous favorites for you to enjoy. We look forward to seeing you this fall with new episodes. Until then, enjoy these classics.
Hello, everyone. This is Lance Mullen, host of the MSU WMA podcast. Today, our guest is Dominique Henderson. Dominique is an Investopedia Top 100 advisor who founded DJH Capital Management and Jumpstart Coaching. I had the opportunity to talk with him about his experiences as an advisor, the motto of "It's time to start changing family trees," future of the industry, and CFP student advice. Enjoy. Welcome back, everyone, to the MSU WMA podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Dominique Henderson. Dominique, thanks for being on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lance, for having me. I'm anxious to get into this.
Yeah. So do you want to kind of give a background of kind of who you are, what you do, and just kind of go over a little background?
Yeah. Here's the maybe not 30-second elevator pitch, maybe like 90 seconds. So started in financial services in 1998, worked for a hedge fund, had always had a love for finance, was lucky to learn a lot on that job, spent 8 years there. And then I left what would be termed institutional financial services and put my focus on personal financial services. So a lot of things that you might be familiar with, which is, getting your life and health and your Series 7 and your Series 66 and start working for a firm. And as most career changers do, or most people that are getting into this field, they don't always stay where they are first, where they first get their job or first opportunity. So I spent, a few years there, but ended up at a larger firm, doing a lot of stuff and learning a lot of things about myself, as well as how financial planning is done, learning trading and different functions, learning the different sides of the business, as far as being in a wirehouse to going to hybrid into an independent RIA. And that led me to want to start my own firm. And during that whole process, I was learning a lot about myself, going back to school, getting my graduate degree, found out about CFP, all that kind of stuff. And so now you see me in 2022, where I have DJH Capital Management, which is my wealth management firm, which I've been running for 6 years, and also Jumpstart Coaching Lab. So that's my consulting firm where I help a lot of people trying to get into the industry and navigate what I did a little bit more succinctly, since I have that knowledge and I can share that with you.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Do you want to kind of share a little bit more about like your coaching style? Maybe help some people that are listening about some of their career changes, what they're kind of thinking through, maybe whether they're thinking investment banking or like private equity, or just in some other industry, maybe marketing, and shifting over to financial planning.
Yeah, I think, Lance, the biggest thing that I always help people with is their why, right? At the end of the day, if you're making a switch or you're just new to this, it's good to start with why you want to do it. What change in your life necessitates changing your career? Or how do you see yourself impacting and helping people, especially when it comes to personal financial services, which are way more personal than finance? You're going to be talking to people about their life changes, their job, their family, their money, all that kind of stuff. So you need to have a good reason as to why you're wanting to go down this field, because like most things that are worth it in life, it's extremely difficult. And you're going to, come through some probably some valleys and some mountaintops, but studying for exams, going for the CFP designation, finishing school, all this kind of stuff can be pretty daunting. And I think having a really good why and or motivation for why you're wanting to go down this field, besides just make a lot of money, which you can do, I think is a good starting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and do you want to kind of elaborate a little bit more about some of your personal avenues, and kind of tell us about how you've had some success in your business, or maybe some challenges that you've had being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. everybody goes through this stuff, right? I was interviewing a industry friend who runs the FPA externship. Her name is Hannah Moore. And we were talking about how this industry is not a real straight linear path. It's often very, zigzag and lateral, right? You make a lot of different types of moves that may not be that conventional. And I know for my part, I start with my personal mission and my why, which is I strongly believe that really great financial advice has the ability to change family trees. And so I believe everybody should have that opportunity. And that's the reason why I do what I do, realizing that I can't serve everybody. And so part of my contribution to the industry at this point in my career is to share the knowledge that I have via content, via coaching, via whatever I do, in order to help more people get into the industry so that they can start helping people change their family tree. And it's just been one of those things where, I haven't done everything perfect. And I still, strive to learn and do more. There's more things, I'm still learning, even this being my 22nd year in the industry. But nonetheless, I still feel that success is defined individually by the person, depending on what type of goals you want. And as long as you can be really clear about who you're trying to help, and if you put that first, then success will follow. That's just kind of my own personal philosophy. If you provide enough value for people in their lives, then that value will be returned to you, usually in spades.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you kind of touched on, it seems like your motto is it's time to change some of the family trees. Do you want to kind of elaborate more on like the story behind that? What's like more of the goal of that?
Yeah, I think it's really simple. It's, there are a lot of people that struggle financially, and I feel it's unnecessary. And I think most of that struggle comes in the fact that finances and personal finances is not common enough to be talked about from, let's call it age 3 and up. Most people don't get this type of knowledge about financial literacy and or financial education until they get to high school, or sometimes as late as college, or even their first or second job. And so by that time, you've got all these decisions that you've made that have to do with money that you may have screwed up. And I just think whether you hire a financial advisor or a financial professional or not, that knowledge should be something that people have earlier in life so that they can make better informed decisions. So that's the whole notion around changing family trees, because when you have this knowledge, you're going to do things differently. You're going to handle money differently. You're going to be able to resolve conflict that you have with money, or maybe money stories, or history that you have around that. And you're going to be able to allow that better decision that you made, the bigger, better decision, if you will, that to have the compounding effect. You know about compound interest, right? The longer you have it uninterrupted, the better it works for you. Well, the same with knowledge. So think about having knowledge about debt and credit cards and investing, years earlier in your life versus years later in your life. You just allow that knowledge to work and compound for you a little bit longer. So that's the whole notion behind changing family trees.
Yeah, I love that. And do you think that there's any difference or something that we can do to change kind of that education? Do you think it needs to start in school better, or is there something we can do outside of school?
Great question. I think at the time of this that we're talking here, maybe there's 17 to 20-ish states in the United States that require some type of financial literacy in order to graduate. That number, in my opinion, should be 50. We have 50 states, it should be 50. And so that's more of a, let's call it, legislative issue at the state level that probably has to take place. But nonetheless, let's say you live in a state that does not have that requirement, and you are a parent and you have kids. You can easily read different books on financial education and or literacy and pass that knowledge on to your kids. So to your question about, should it happen in school? Should it happen outside of school? Should it happen in both? I think it should happen in both as often as necessary in order to get people the knowledge that they need.
For sure. I totally agree. And then as far as financial planning, this kind of correlates a little bit, but where do you see like the future of the industry going? Do you see it changing at all, or do you see it kind of staying the same? Or you want to touch on that a little bit?
I think it will change. It has evolved quite a bit. Just for those that are listening that don't know, financial services is a relatively young industry as compared to things like medicine or law. So when you think about roughly the mid 70s ish is where, personalized financial planning kind of took off. We're only talking about 50 years. So
Hmm.
there's a lot more, I think, that's coming down the pike. And, individuals like yourself that will be part of the next generation, I think, are going to bring a lot of new ideas and innovation. I think that is necessary, right? I always compare this to, because I'm kind of interesting, I guess, in the sense that I am, I'll be 47 next
Hmm.
year, and the generation I'm in is kind of sandwiched in between. We didn't have technology. I still remember a phone, like a pay phone, and I cell phones, right? So
Yeah.
I'm kind of sandwiched in between that, and I've kind of adopted more of the technology. So I'm of the persuasion, if we can automate all these things and have all this convenience at our fingertip, whether it be Netflix or DoorDash or Amazon Prime, I kind of feel that financial services should have some of that also, right? We
Hmm.
shouldn't be so stuffy and buttoned up and all this other kind of stuff. I think it should be much more easier for people to have conversations with financial professionals and exchange knowledge so that they can get to where they want to go in life versus maybe the image that people have had of, let's say Wolf of Wall Street or Boiler Room or any of those kind of movies
Yeah.
where, it seems like the financial advisor or the financial professional is so far removed from, let's call it Joe Public. So I think I see a more of a convergence um, across that relationship, hopefully going forward. And I also hope to see a lot more, let's call it technological disruption in the industry. Whether that's making texting, a little bit more ubiquitous instead of it
Yeah.
saying that, oh, it's not compliant to text your client, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I look for a lot of those innovations going forward, and hopefully those changes happen more rapidly.
And kind of like how you touched on like the movies and stuff, like I feel like there's this stigma behind the finance industry, like the Wolf of Wall Street, the Boiler Room, like those are what it's made out to be. And that's not really what it is. And people always say like money is a sensitive topic that you shouldn't talk about. But I feel like it's not talked about enough. What's your standpoint on that?
No, I would agree. I would think that I think, I don't know how long ago this was. This was on a few or several several podcast episodes ago on my podcast. I was talking with a guest, and they were saying how, and I don't remember where the survey was found, but it was basically like people are more comfortable talking about their dating and their sex life than they are about money. And we recorded this back in like maybe 2019 or something like that.
Hmm.
So it's still amazing that, um, that the topic of money, because it's so personal, I believe, is still not talked about in the way that it will allow people to have more freedom, more economic freedom in their choices. And because, here's the deal is like, you get a job, you don't know about money, you kind of feel like you should know about it because you earn the money, but that doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily make your decision making really good because you don't have a really good strategy or a rubric for making those decisions. You're making them a lot out of your own personal story and your own personal bias. To have somebody come in that is objective to say, hey, Lance, why are you spending money every month on this if you say your financial goal is, something else?
Yeah.
That is often really helpful, just that accountability so that you can actually reach the goal. You
Hmm.
know, it's like, if you want to go work out or something like that, you might hire a personal trainer or a gym buddy, because they're going to keep you accountable and be like, hey, we
Yeah.
said we're going to work out, 4 days a week. We said we're going to do legs today. We said we're going to do chest tomorrow. That kind of stuff is really helpful. And so it makes sense that you should have something like that similar when it comes to dealing with your money.
Yeah. And you mentioned at the beginning that you're a financial coach and kind of a mentor, and you kind of get this stigma that a lot of people like to call themselves coaches or the quarterback of a financial plan. And there's obviously different styles of coaching. What do you consider your style to be, and how do people respond to it?
Um, in a word, my style is practical. I, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer or the greatest tool in the shed, if you will, but I do think I do a couple things well, which is I'm always really great at asking questions to kind of find out the reason behind something, and so
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, I bring that to the coaching and the mentoring and training that I do. When someone comes in contact with or learns about Jumpstart and what we're doing to kind of prepare and or help people enter this industry, most of the comments that I get happen to be around, you seem very genuine, you seem very authentic. And that's the only way I really know how to do it, is not, showing you one side of Dominique that's with his clients versus, the guy that likes to drink wine and spend time with his wife versus the guy that
Yeah.
likes to read. Those are all the same people, right?
Yeah.
They're obviously in different, in different capacities. But the point being,
Yeah.
I just show up with, what I feel is relevant information, um, whether it offends people or not. Obviously, I try not to do that on purpose. But for instance, a lot of what I say, for instance, on some of my lives or on social media, I make a reference to a part of the industry that I feel is broken. And sometimes I call
Hmm.
it the broken dealer for good reason. That does not mean that everybody that works for a broker dealer or in that scheme is bad, or that there
Yeah.
aren't some good ones. It just means that that's a part of the industry that I look at and I see that it's broken. And so I call it what
Yeah.
it is. And so that's pretty much my style, is just kind of say what it is.
Yeah. I kind of like that straight up mentality, be who you are. And I think that's how you succeed in life. Um, and you mentioned how you're active on social media and you also have a pretty successful podcast. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, and we're actually, always making changes, always trying to improve. So we have Conversations for Financial Professionals that in about 4 weeks, we'll be finishing up season 7. So we have each season is roughly about 10 episodes. We kind of do sprinkle in some lives in that point in time. So it's been about 70 episodes of just like great conversation, content, insight, knowledge about the industry. And we'll see how long we keep it up. It's just one
Yeah.
of those things where there's a lot of interest that I have, a lot of other things that I want to do for the industry, for myself personally, in my wealth management firm. And so that's that. That's how usually people find me, is because a lot of that content is out there, obviously on iTunes or YouTube and stuff like that. So that's typically how a lot of people find me. And then, over time, it's been about 4 years now, we've accumulated somewhat of a following or a
Yeah.
community. And I like to say that the home of the community is really the internet. So it doesn't really matter where we congregate around, because that's changed over time too. But at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of people trying to connect and network to find their place in the industry. That's all it is. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, I don't care if you become a financial coach. I don't care if you become a CFP. I don't care if you work for the broken dealer or an independent RIA, or if you start your own. I just want you to find the people in this world that you're called to help. If
Yeah.
I can help you find that, I feel like I've done my job, and you will be the better for it. So that's kind of the goal. And so I've done a lot of things over my years, and I think one of the things that I want to be known for after I'm no longer on this earth is my contribution to the industry by the way of helping people find their right spot.
And we'll definitely put your channel and your social media in our description below. But I kind of want to touch more on kind of, you said earlier, you got to know your why and you got to know why you want to be in the industry. Do you want to talk a little bit more about your why and why you do it?
Yeah, I mean, so the family trees thing is a big thing. I have been of the persuasion for a long time now that after a certain point of, let's call it success, meeting your goals, gaining momentum, one of the duties of a person, and at least I take this personally, is to hold the door open for other people. And so that's kind of that's part of the reason why I do it. Now, I tremendously enjoy talking with all my clients in my wealth management firm. I love those interactions. I love learning new things and sharing them with clients and updating their plans and making sure that they get to where they want to go. So I'll always continue to do that. But you know, there comes a time where you decide how big do you want that to get, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've just kind of consciously made the decision that I'm not really, you know, too intrigued, let's call it, with building something up that big. So that gives me some time to, you know, donate, if you will, seed into, invest in what the industry is going to look like 5, 10, 15, 25 years from now by what I'm. So that's kind of my why. It's got a somewhat of a two-pronged why to help people that I work with one-on-one inside my wealth management firm find their way, act as their financial guide, partner with them to get to where they want to go, and teaching those lessons in some shape or form inside the Jumpstart community.
Nice. And you obviously have a great passion for the industry. Do you want to share some like specific examples? I mean, I know you can't talk about specific clients, but maybe just touch on a few examples or times where you really felt great about what your job is and what you do.
Yeah, I have several, but I'll have one that I can tell. I have a client that I've been working with probably about 2 years now. And when we first started working together, her husband was involved in the process, and that's pretty typical. But you always have one client, at least in my experience, that kind of takes the lead in the relationship, and they attend 100% of the meetings, whereas the other one is kind of in the background. And so she was the one that took the lead. And so it had been a while since I had, you know, caught up with her husband. And it was a day that we had already scheduled to meet, her and I, and it was his birthday. And so he comes in because they were going to go out and they had some type of outing for that day. And her and I are doing the meeting and we're, you know, going back and forth, da, 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 da. And then he comes in and kind of interrupts the meeting. And he says, "Hey, Dominique, I just want to let you know that I really, really appreciate the work that you've been doing with our family, specifically with my wife. And I just want to say that I've noticed a change in her demeanor. Like I see that she's less stressed, less anxious, less frustrated, and she has more of a calm and a peace about her. So he's like, I just really want to let you know that I noticed that. I appreciate it." And he was like, "That's all. See you later. Peace." I was like, wow, that was like one of the highest compliments I've ever had. And that's what I think this industry has the ability to do for people. And that's what I mean when I'm saying changing family trees and things like that. And, you know, we don't always talk about it maybe in society, but, you know, the stress that comes from not being confident about your financial plan and your financial situation as you get older, I can imagine only is intensified and compounds. You know, there's probably a lot that I know, at least recently, let's call it in the last 5 to 10 years, that's been said about mental health. But what about the mental health attached to how you feel about your finances, right?
Yeah.
that's probably not talked about enough, but I think it affects a lot of people tremendously, right?
Yeah,
If you're, you think
100%.
about, yeah, you think about being 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, this client is going on 70, and not being confident as years pass and you have less time left on the earth, right? But to exchange that feeling with a confidence that that your needs will be met, and not only that, you have a plan for passing on what you've worked so hard for. All that, having all those things kind of checked off or crossed off, if you will, in your life as you see the end of your life coming, gives you a peace of mind that I don't know that you can put a price tag on. So I think that's what he was alluding to when he paid me that compliment.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. I love to hear it. And just kind of switching gears a little bit, here at Michigan State, we have a wealth management minor program, and that's kind of the CFP courses. Once you finish that coursework, you're able to sit for the CFP. Do you have any advice for students maybe in that program, or even students outside the program looking to maybe get involved with the industry?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about CFP. So I am a CFP. I decided to go after the certified financial planner certification around year 14, 15 in the career. So I didn't do it immediately. I didn't make that decision immediately, which is a little different than anyone that's like, an undergrad studying this stuff. But I think we do have some things in common. The first is the realization that there needs to be a standard for the profession. When you think about, medicine or law or even accountancy, right? You have certain designations and ways to go about it that everybody kind of accepts. That's where I hope the CFP designation, I think that's the seat I would like to see the CFP hold inside the financial planning profession. I do believe it's a profession. Now, granted, I believe under the larger umbrella of financial services, there are a lot of things, including CFP. But when we're talking specifically the financial planning profession, I think the CFP is the gold standard. And I think that's what people are interested in financial planning should pursue. And I don't think it should be an easy path, because it's not easy for anything that's worth having and that people are successful at. And this shouldn't be any different. So my advice for anyone in that program or thinking about that is just to kind of consider and count the cost. I have some, and we can link this up in the description, but I have some,
For sure.
I have like a checklist for people to kind of go through that involves, the first part of what I feel is kind of like the discovery or exploration. You kind of decide what is it about this career that you like? You explore your why, you talk to people that are in the industry, You then do analysis with all the information that you just gathered. Like, what do you need to do with that? Do you need to go back and take some more classes? If you're a career changer, do you need to find a study program? All that kind of stuff. And then, obviously the decision of going down that path. If you're in it already, you've probably done a lot of those steps. I would say this is a time in your life where it's going to feel like all you do is study. All you do is do the question bank. All you do is, classes and all, trying to remember grats and gruts and crats and cruts and all this other kind of stuff. I get it. However, it will pass. This will pass. This will be a very small blip on the radar after you're looking back years and years. So with that in mind, I would say my advice is to enjoy the process. I know that seems a little hard, but it's going to make it so much easier for you. Instead of resisting it, like, just embrace the process. Enjoy the process. It will pass. It's difficult, and it's difficult for a reason. I remember those days where I was 20 to 25 hours a week. And, I didn't have the luxury of being in school full time at that time to concentrate fully on that. I had, 3 kids that were teenagers. I was married. I was working a job that committed me 50 to 60 hours a week. I was in grad school. Like, I had a lot of stuff. So I don't even think it's going to get easier per se. I think advice would be, if you're going down that path, if you're interested in it, you're coming out of high school, early in college, and if you know that's what you want to do because you've done the requisite amount of research, this is the best time to do it. When you don't,
Yeah.
when you let's say, lesser obligations than you would if you're older.
Yeah.
Getting married, bringing kids into the picture, all this other kind of stuff, it gets harder. So
I believe it.
get it out the way.
Yeah. Was it worth it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
Awesome to hear.
I don't think that I have rarely met a person that has decided to work with me just because I have CFP behind my name. And I do a pretty good job of asking people why they came to work with me, and they just don't name that as a reason. However, I do think that the information inside the CFP program, I believe the people that you'll meet going down that path that have made the same decision as you is going to set you apart. All of these are variables into an equation that, only you living out your life will, show us the results of that. But I think you get to understand a lot of information that is useful for the planning process to give clients a comprehensive and holistic view of their financial picture. Yes, I do. I believe it's worth it if people want to put the time in. I was just on maybe it was LinkedIn, I can't remember, one of my social channels, that somebody was telling me, I posted something about the CFP exam because the window was passed, and somebody posted or replied back to me. They were like, I've already tried it 3 times. I'm taking a year off. And I get it. I get it. Like, it's not the easiest exam to pass. There's only, 6 out of 10 people that do successfully pass it on the first try. And so if you're part of that 40%, hey, I feel your pain. Like, I get it. I get it. I haven't passed I haven't failed the CFP exam, but I have failed other exams. And I know what that's like, to put in all that time and then you have to start over. So I totally get it. This is the reason why I tell people, count the cost before you start the process, because you ideally only want to sit one time.
Yeah.
So
and then you mentioned people could reach out to you. What's probably the best way to reach out to you with questions or just to connect?
yeah, the best way to connect with me is there's 2 ways. The best way would be one of the best ways would be LinkedIn. I accept most of my connection requests. Now, disclaimer: if you connect with me because you saw a video and you pepper me with like 15 questions, like, I'm probably not going to answer that. Setting the expectation right now. I'm looking at my YouTube channel right now, and I have probably over, like, publicly listed over 50 videos on subjects about basically everything you need to know about a financial services career. So what you may get in a response is, have you watched the videos on my YouTube channel? Right? That might be, part of my answer to you. But, to connect with me, send me a connection question on LinkedIn, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Those are the best ways to stay in the, let's call it, the loop of content that I create, and get what you need so you can move to the next level.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the description below. And Dominique, it was great having you on. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely, man. Nice to meet you, Lance, and keep up what you're doing. I appreciate the program that Stephen has put together there at MSU. So hopefully you're taking full advantage of it.
Yeah. Thanks for being on.
All right. Thanks.
If you like what you just heard, please like, comment, and share. MSU WMA, or Michigan State Wealth Management Association, is a student-run organization part of the Eli Broad College of Business, located in East Lansing, Michigan. Our mission is to inspire and create the next generation of financial planners. And as always, thank you for listening on today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please check us out on our channels on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And also check us out on our socials at MSU WMA and msuwma.com.